quedamos acá. Inicié, puse la hora. Pues, antes de que empecemos puedo decir algo. Gracias por confirmar la hora 2 veces que iniciaste el juego. Configurar. Mucha gente no se toma en serio este paso. Dejan el reloj en 12 y siguen adelante. Pero tú tomaste el tiempo de configurarlo y te lo agradezco. Ahora sé que esta experiencia es importante para ti. Estás prestando atención. Ni siquiera tengo forma de saber si la hora que pusiste es la correcta. ¿Sabes algo? Hagamos un trato. Como cooperaste la próxima vez que inicies el juego y veas la pantalla, porfa, pon tu hora favorita en el reloj. Adelante, elige la hora que quieras, aunque no sea la correcta, te lo ganaste. Bien, ya te dejo que vuelvas al videojuego. What the... Este juego es muy raro, pero bueno, está chévere, está chimbita el juego, está chimbita. El juego juega con uno psicológicamente. Juega mucho con nuestra mente este juego. Y me gusta. Welcome back.
This is the story of a man named Stanley.
Quit the game and start in again.
Stanley
Eso ya lo vi. Se reinició todo de
All
nuevo.
of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music.
¡Un cameraman! ¡Hey! Ese cabrón habla del escrito, dile.
And rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
Seguimos en el canon. Creo que sí, seguimos en el canon. Eso para mí es una buena noticia, la verdad. Me gusta que el ranador rompa la cuarta pared.
He felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long. Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out? Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each Stanley's co-workers, the lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing. This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly? No. He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never. It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world?
Ay. Uy. Ah.
But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy, or sad, or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided... blackness, and a rising chill of uncertainty.
Creo que tengo que seguir buscando nuevos destinos.
Yes. He had won. He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door.
Vamos a romper el destino de este juego.
Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Soy el rey del despecho. Tenemos que romper al juego y ya sé cómo hacerlo. Les voy a enseñar entonces.
All of his co-workers were gone.
Okay.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps
Vamos a hacer las
simply
cosas
missed a memo.
mal.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. Ah, yes, truly a room worth admiring. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me. This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life. She's been waiting.
Uy, qué gallo. Soy el rey del despecho. Uy, oh no.
That's her, Stanley. You need to be the one to do this. To...
Ok. ¡Filosofía! A ver qué pasa. 4.
Is that you?
Sí, soy yo.
Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven.
Okay.
Right. in and tell me all about your day.
Oigo, no.
Gotcha. Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here. This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley. Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence. Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told to do. Now he's pushing a
¡Ay!
button.
¡Eso cambió!
He's eating
¡Eso
lunch.
cambió!
Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life. But in his mind, he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful. And each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him. And so he began to fantasize about his own job. First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought excited him terribly. So he went further. He imagined that he came to two open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold. As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths and destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And
Hey,
down another
mano.
was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable.
Con un bebé.
It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head,
Ya
he
hice dos, me
relived it
falta la del
again,
bebé.
and then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time. But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets which life is the real one. And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
¿Lo presiono o no lo presiono? Vamos a esperar, bajar el control en la mesa. A ver qué sucede.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley. We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him.
El flaco, háblame flaco. Justamente vi su invitación. Deme un toque, papi, deme un toque. Termino esta cosita y me voy para Warzone, ¿listo? Me voy para allá.
Perhaps, well, maybe this time he'll see. Maybe this time. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried.
Uy. Este juego está re loco. Vale, vas atrás. ¿Cómo así?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
¿Cómo así?
Stanley
Vale, vas
decided to go to the
atrás.
meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Y es que, mire, este juego trata sobre
Yet there was
romper
not
su
a
mente.
single person here either.
Entonces,
Feeling a wave
el
of
locutor
disbelief,
le dice a usted
Stanley
qué hacer.
decided to go up to
Si
his
usted hace
boss,
eso,
coming
pues
to a
se termina el
staircase.
juego rápido.
Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Claro, ¿por qué no? Uy. Siempre
But
hago
Stanley
stream de
just
Warzone.
couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made
¿Qué?
any logical sense. And as
Hizo
Stanley
un bucle.
pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating?
Para
No,
PlayStation
Stanley said to
sí
himself,
está
this
gratis,
is all
en
too
Plus.
strange. This can't be real.
Es que no me
But
aparece
at
el mensaje
last,
completo.
he
¿Lo
came
puede
to the
terminar, por favor?
conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon.
pero-
I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he
Ay.
imagined himself soaring through space on a magical star field, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid?
No, en PS5,
And
PS5,
then
claro,
perhaps the
PS5.
strangest question of the
Bueno, tengo la versión de Play 4, pero es Play
all
5.
entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving
Pero es muy
himself,
repetitivo.
believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take
Es que mire,
responsibility
el
for
juego es
himself?
repetitivo,
Stanley is
pero
as awake right now as
tiene,
he's ever
es
been in
muy,
his life.
el man rompe la cuarta pared
Hearing
de
the
un
voice
momento al
speak these
otro.
words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all,
Es re
he knew
loco
for
esto.
certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this
No
was a
cambia.
dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight
Por
of the
fin.
blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment and my wife and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been.
Vaya.
My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
¿No?
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
Mano. Este juego está loquísimo. Muy loco este juego.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Mariela.
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of
mira.
work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy, this much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
No me voy a volver a la oficina. Si me vuelvo a la oficina me salgo. Nah. Es un maldito bucle. No crea su historia o sigue la historia de los demás. Mira, Warzone, la única persona que está ahí, gracias por ver el directo, le deseo lo mejor, muy amable.